we'll kind of kick off the conversation because we want to make the most of the time that we have today. So thank you to everyone who's joining us. My name is Sandra Waithaka. I'm Program Manager at the Global Good Fund, and our panel today is on women in leadership, and we have some amazing women joining me for the conversation. I'm going to just go ahead and go through your names, but then I'll also give you a chance to introduce yourselves. So we have Carrie Rich, who's the CEO and co-founder of the Global Good Fund. We have Pamela Kaplan, who's the CEO and co-founder and CEO, founder and CEO of Brunch and Budget. We have Soumya Dabrival, who's the founder of Project Bala. And we have Kimberly Lewis, who's the president and CEO of Goodwill Industries, Texas. All right. That was really beautiful. So today, obviously, this is part of our Threads of Change panel. And we wanted to take this month of March to discuss women because we're celebrating women. So a lot of the conversation today is going to be around our experiences, our lived experiences as people who identify as women, as people who've lived as women and mothers and individuals. So just for everyone to know, that's how we're going to frame the conversation, and it's going to be focused on those experiences. I'd love to start with, a bit of who you guys are. So I think I'll kick off with Kim. If you can give us a bit about who you are, 1 or 2 sentences, and then what you do, and then we'll take it off from there.
Certainly. Thank you so much, Sandra. I'm so glad that you all have taken a little bit of time to join us today to talk about these amazing women. So my name is Kimberly B. Lewis. I am the president and CEO of Goodwill Industries of East Texas, as well as a Global Good Fund board member. I also own a consulting firm, Motivational Muse. So I'm an author, business person, entrepreneur, mother, daughter, and all of the above that, so many of us can relate to.
Love it. Thank you, Kim. After Kim, I'll kick it off to Soumya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Soumya Dabrival. I'm the founder of Project Bala. We are a women's health organization where we're trying to destigmatize women's health at the grassroots communities across India while providing sustainable menstrual hygiene products, all by generating employment for rural women entrepreneurs. We've been able to work with over 800,000 women and girls over the last 6 years. And hopefully, our aim and mission is that we become redundant in the next 15 years, where we've empowered each and every woman to take charge of her health and hygiene across India. It's absolutely wonderful to be doing this in the month of March with some people who I personally take inspiration from.
I love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Soumya. We'll go ahead to you, Pamela.
Hi, everyone. My name is Pamela Kaplan. I am a certified financial planner and accredited financial counselor. As Sandra said, I am the founder and CEO of Brunch and Budget, and I am also the co-founder of Sea Change, which is a financial liberation program for creators of color who believe that taking control of your finances is a revolutionary act. The program has morphed in many iterations. I'm a 2022 Global Good Fund Fellow, and we have been studying the racial wealth divide, interpersonal neurobiology, and personal finance for years, and have really found a way to help, in particular, creators of color take action on their finances. And I am so excited to be here as well.
Thank you so much, Pam. All right, Carrie, take us home. Go ahead.
Red Caboose here. I am thrilled to be with everyone today and really honored to contribute alongside these amazing panelists who inspire me every day. I am the co-founder and CEO of the Global Good Fund, and my life's work is to support the leadership of amazing human beings who contribute to making the world better through business. I also am a mother to 3 little people. I'm an impact investor through the Global Impact Fund and have the honor of supporting our impact consulting practice. And I try to write and be outside in nature and invest in myself and my own leadership development in my free time. Thank you, Sandra.
Love it. Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your introductions. So I'd love to kick us off with kind of the first question. And it's along the lines of, do you believe that, being a woman has influenced both how you lead your organization or how you show up in your role at work? And I'd love to kick it off with, let's go to Carrie first, and then.
Thank you, Sandra. So I have mostly experienced challenges as a result of being a woman in business and also opportunities. And I would start by saying that men have been incredibly important to my personal and professional journey and have opened a lot of doors. I will say that I think the challenges have been mostly women, but also age. And so starting at an early age as a first-time social impact entrepreneur is challenging because you're trying to do something that is not traditional in a lot of settings, and I look younger than the people I'm sitting alongside. But we all know one's voice is no less important in that setting. And so I've really relied on having pretty direct conversations with typically the men who are sitting alongside to help pull a chair up to the table, help open doors. And specifically, that'll look like, people not speaking to me directly in conversations, kind of speaking around or over me because they assume the other person who's in the meeting is the one responsible. And so what that looks like in practicality is just pulling folks aside and sharing what I've observed and asking, could we try this a little differently? And here's how. And usually what I find is most people are just unaware. It doesn't come from a bad place. It comes from just being a bit unaware of what's happening real time.
I love what you said, Carrie, in terms of like obviously having men be an ally and a partner in that way. Pam, I'd love to hear from you. How do you feel like being as a woman has influenced both your role at work and
Yeah.
how you lead?
No, I love, Carrie, what you said in particular about being able to take people aside and just make them aware of it. Because I do think a huge part of it is just you don't recognize your own like actions or biases or privileges until someone points them out to you. And to be able to be in a space where like you trust each other enough to have that conversation is amazing. And I think that that's one of our strengths as women in general, is to be able to notice those things and also figure out how to frame them in a way where people feel like that there's now a shared understanding. I think that as a leader and as someone who is in an industry, I'm in financial services. So I'm in an industry where only 23% of certified financial planners are women, and it's been that way for decades. And I am proud to say that I run a firm that is all women. And one of the things that I have been able to do also as a mother is to give space to my employees who are also mothers, right? Everyone has their pickup and drop off times in their calendars. No one schedules meetings during those times, right? We stopped having meetings in the evenings unless the planner chooses that they're okay with that. People have unlimited vacation time because randomly, like a Wednesday is a random day off from school because the DOE decided that and your kid is home, right? And so there are all of these things that I think, because I'm a mother, because I'm a woman, that I trust my team to work and get the work done. And besides that, like they also have lives and they also have plenty of other things to deal with. And I want work to feel like it's a part of their life and not their whole life. And so that's a big thing that I try to practice as a leader.
Love that. I love that. I'll also say, as someone who works at the Global Good Fund, we practice the same thing. Thank you, Carrie. Leadership the same way. It's beautiful. Soumya, I'd love to hear from you. Obviously, your industry is you're working with women, women's health. So how would you say that's influenced both how you've led and in your own life as well altogether? I'd love to hear how being a woman has influenced that.
Yes, and I think I'll pick on a point that Carrie mentioned, which is being a woman and then being a young woman trying to do something which is non-conventional. It's tough. You're in a room with 60-year-old men of certain thinking and ideologies which have never been challenged, and you're trying to speak up there. And especially in the beginning, when we didn't have numbers to show, when we didn't have lots of proof of and validation on what we were doing, to stand in that room and say, I'm a woman who understands these health problems a lot more than any of you can. And that's where I think being a woman really played to what I do today. I could connect to the problems a lot more. I could connect to the solutions a lot more. Being young meant I could think innovatively. I wasn't thinking in a box. I wasn't thinking conventionally. But trust me, the first 2.5 years when we didn't have these big numbers to boast with, it was so tough because you were considered soft. They thought that, you're in the development sector because you have this, you're a woman who's nurturing and empathetic, but they didn't see the numbers that we could come with. They didn't see the business we could build around this. So I love now standing in that same room and sharing my numbers with the same group of people. So I think strongly believe that no one wants to shut doors in your faces. It's just the lack of information. It's just the lack of challenging that convention. So being a woman in leadership needs a little bit of courage, but if you've got the right people and the right mission, it doesn't matter. The gender doesn't matter at the end of the day.
I love that. I love that. Kim, we've heard a lot of great things, and I'd love to hear from you as well, how you feel like it's influenced kind of your role in leadership and your ongoing journey, being both a woman and a mother as well.
Certainly I agree with every single thing that's been said. And I think, a lot of it is truly biases. But there's a lot of strength in the characteristics that women typically bring to the workforce, because our brains operate differently. And so we're multitaskers. We're naturally good at those things. We have those communication skills. We show care and compassion to individuals that we serve and individuals who work for us. And those are very, 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 very strong characteristics. But we also have to then develop into what we need in the business world and in the business sector. But those are things that we can learn. Not everybody can learn. They can fake, they can try to fake, but it doesn't really come across. They can't fake compassion and caring. If you're not a multitasker, you're not a multitasker. And so, we're used to doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 things at a time and doing it exceptionally well, but we also have to learn some of those other things and learn the language of the boardroom. Learn the language. There's certain things that men will say that are very typical in, say, a resume or in their conversation when they are trying to get a contract, and they say things like, I'm driven, whereas a woman will say, I'm committed. And so that may seem like, oh, well, that's kind of a soft response. I can say both of them, I'm driven and I'm committed, because I know the language. And that gets you into the room and get you a seat at the table until you can be able to show those numbers, because we're all driven by what we read, what we know, what we've grown up with, our own experiences that turns into biases. And so we just have to learn how to work around those things and use the strengths that we have as women to elevate ourselves.
I love it. I love it. With this first question, I think we've covered already so many amazing different tidbits and topics, both about being women, mothers, and kind of like learning the language between, how we need to move in the business world and how we move in our world, softness and a bit more of those things. So this has been already great. I'd love to come back to what you said, Kimberly, in terms of biases. And, I think I speak for myself that I've definitely dealt with a couple of, gendered biases in different workplaces. I'd love to hear, Pam, from you as someone who's in a sector which is, really 23%, like you said, women. How have you kind of, what kind of gender biases have you dealt with and how have you overcome them? I'd love to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been when I first started, I worked at a financial planning firm in Midtown Manhattan as a wealth management firm. Every single partner was a man. Every single financial planner was a man. And all the support staff were women. And I wanted to be a financial planner. I knew that's what I wanted to be. I knew that's what I got there for. And it was one of those things where I realized that there were skills that I had that a lot of the male financial planners didn't have. I was the one who was proofreading their emails. I was the one who was making sure the plans were like top to bottom, like all the T's were crossed, all the I's were dotted, right? And so I think what I did was I leaned into the skill sets that I had and the skill sets, Kim, that you were mentioning specifically around being able to multitask, the attention to detail, those kinds of things. And that's how I got myself in the room. And that's how I got those financial planners to pay attention to me, because they chose to mentor me. I have one specifically who was my mentor. They chose to mentor me instead of the male financial planning associates because I kept showing up, and I kept showing up in a way that was different and distinct from others in the room. And I think that's something that I ended up leaning into as a strength.
Love it. You mentioned, I think, a key word here, which is mentorship, right? And kind of like that development and path. And so I'm going to keep on the gendered biases, but I'm also gonna, go to a bit more of mentorship kind of conversation. I would love to know from you all, how do you in your different jobs and roles mentor other women in your industries or outside? And I'm thinking specifically, some of you have talked about young women, and now, obviously we're all beautifully going with time, and that means there's more young women coming in, there's more happening. So I'd love to hear from you, Soumya, and then Carrie, like how you kind of are working to mentor women within, your workplace, where you feel like maybe you as a and I don't think the work is ever done, but maybe it feels like you're you feel like you're at a good point, we've worked on it, and maybe you have a young woman come in and say, actually, I think we can do more on this. So how are you mentoring women within your workspaces? Soumya, please, I'd love to hear.
Awesome. I think, and I'm not saying that this is exclusive to women, but this is definitely more present in women, where we like to take people along with us. I mean, I see a lot of women leaders, when they're growing with their teams. They're making sure that every single person on their team has that learning curve with them, has that sort of privileges that they are being exposed to now with their growth as well. And I think that's super unique to being a woman. We've built a community, we've built a group of people who stood by us, who helped us, challenge these norms, who helped us trailblaze in a way, and create that path. And we always take along our people with us. So I think that's something I do consciously as a leader, even as a Global Good Fellow, when we were exposed to the fellowship and we were doing these incredible learnings and lessons, I would always document them and take them back to the office the next day. I would spend an hour just talking about what we learned, just so that even if, I could share 80% of what I learned with the team, and they could resonate with 50% of what was happening, that's enough, that's enough for everyone to at least know this exists and there is all of this available and accessible, right? So that was my one little step that I'd always decided, be it any fellowship, any conference, any conversation that I'm exclusively part of, how can I include everybody on my team? And now, given that we're 6 years into our journey, and of course have a lot more structure, when young women come in, we always give them one person to shadow. So be it finance meetings, be it investor meetings, be it internal team meetings, they're always there. And they're always told to just learn. Because I felt like the reason I am able to do what I'm doing is a result of many, many amazing women digging this path up for me, working really, really hard to allow me to dream and allow me to build. And I have this responsibility to pass it on. And that's what we've inculcated as values within the organization. And we're only one man in the entire organization. So we really carry, all of us really carry each other.
Love it. Carrie, I'd love to hear from you, the same question.
Well, I benefit from a lot of mentorship, and mentoring has mattered significantly in my professional and personal life. And I think one of the realizations for me was that mentoring sort of has this aura of being so positive. Some of the most profound mentors in my life have called me out where there's a gap and have said, you really want to dig in on this, think through how you could do better, think differently. And I've so appreciated that. And one of the challenges in being a mentor as a woman is a lot of people assume sort of a softness, especially when you're in a social impact sector, that it's all rosy and positive all the time. And, when I offer direct, candid, honest, critical feedback, it's perceived as, very bad. And the reality is I couldn't be more caring. I wouldn't offer. And so the framing of that matters a lot, as you might imagine. But when I try to mentor, first of all, they're quite long-standing relationships because change isn't quick. And especially with relationships, it takes a few years to build true trust and open meaningful doors. I've also found that actually opening the doors matters more than the amount of time that I've spent with mentees. So the more doors I can open, the better for the mentees. And that mentoring is not only an age thing, it's really an opportunity, leveling the playing field. And one area that matters a lot to me is board service and corporate board service, for-profit, nonprofit. And it's an opportunity for me to mentor because someone else mentored me and opened the doors for me to serve on boards. And now I've really tried to make it a priority that no matter where someone is in their career, opening doors for other women to serve on boards creates an incredibly important, rich diversity for companies that actually adds tangible business value. And it requires being a mentor no matter where someone is in their professional journey.
Love it, love it. I think, Carrie, you've spoken a lot to how important it is that mentors are not just, you know, these positive, amazing figures, but really people who keep us both in check and in line with how we vision and our values work. And I think a good point, you all kind of talked on tone, you know, softness, this approach, you know, where as women, we come into a space and people, while we are naturally caring and nurturing, expect those to be more of our tendencies rather than maybe perhaps being outspoken and a bit more, you know, to the point, as I'd put it. Kim, I'd love to hear from you as well. Like, you know, obviously Goodwill is a huge company, and you've kind of had, you know, the experiences of both being a fellow and a board member now. How would you say that you've been able to both overcome any biases and as well mentor other women within your industry? I'd love to hear.
Certainly, you know, much like Pamela, nonprofits typically have a lot of women at the helm, but not with Goodwill. Because of our history, our long 100+ year history coming out of the Methodist Church and a lot of Methodist ministers leading Goodwills and building Goodwills. And so there were only a few. And of course, being a person of color, for many years, I was it. There was one other person, and when she retired, I was it for probably about 10 years. And so when I began to really fight against that, there were a lot of biases, certainly, you know, you're going to bring negative attention to us. You know, we don't want, you know, we're already diverse. We serve people with disabilities. Isn't that enough? You know, all of those kinds of things. And so I just continued on working and invited individuals to come into the organization and began to mentor the VPs, the direct reports of other CEOs who would reach out to me and say, would you mentor me? Would you help me, you know, with my career? How do I get to where you are? And so I continued to mentor several people throughout the year, male and female, but a lot of females, and helping them to really chart their next steps. And I always say, chart your next step, whether it's inside the organization or outside the organization. Sometimes you have to leave to be recognized, and that's okay. Advancement is advancement, you know, wherever it leads. And so, you know, really just encouraging them to, you know, do the things that they need to do, and also to rise above, you know, some of the things that really hold us down. One of the major issues that women have to deal with, and women of color in particular have to deal with, is pay equity. And, you know, that continues to be, you know, a bone that sticks in my neck, you know, that, you know, we have to fight so hard to get what we are due, and still comes up short, you know. And it goes back to those biases. You know, many years ago, before I got into the nonprofit sector, one of my bosses said that he had to pay one of my coworkers who didn't even have the experience or the education that I had, but we were doing the same job. He had to pay him more because he had a family. Oh, really? I too have a family, but it really shouldn't matter. The job is the job, and we're both doing the job. And, you know, and so, you know, having to constantly fight those kinds of things and speak up for yourself. So a lot of my mentoring is helping women to speak up for themselves. Take into your boss's office or your board of directors, give them all of the information, the documentation. You've done your homework. You know that you're not being paid equitably. Or you know that you're being overlooked for certain positions. Give them the evidence, and then it's in their court. So if they don't make the right choice, how does that make them feel? And how does that make them look? And so, so many times we want to play nice. And you can be professional, but I'm going to give you the information. And then if I don't like the results, I have the option to leave.
Yeah, no,
So you can't be afraid to walk as well.
Kim, you've talked a lot about a really key, element, I think, in so many women's journeys, especially for advancement in careers, those paid conversations, right? Those making sure that you and your colleague who are both working the same level, them being a man, are being paid the same way. I think that's really key. I remember my first couple of jobs in the US and at another nonprofit, and I was so surprised that my colleague was being paid like, wait, and I didn't know how to have those conversations. I didn't have the mentorship. I didn't have the capacity. I'd like to say now I'm in a better place to have those conversations due to obviously amazing mentorship within my
You
network.
had the capacity. You
Yes,
had the capacity,
yes,
just not
yeah,
the mentorship.
yes, and exactly. So no, that's a really key element. And I think you've also talked about a bit about advancement. And so I'd like to discuss advancement, both talking about, so there's a question here in the chat that I think is great. Someone asked, how do you find your center and peace amidst the many demands your time as mother, partners, and women in leadership? And I know for some women, there's the fear of, and in many companies this still happens, and specifically perhaps, I had a family member who she was pregnant and is excited for her next son. And unfortunately, the company didn't want to keep her on. So they let her off because she was having a child. And while this might not happen in the US and there might be a few more laws, this is still happening globally in other places. So it's a twofold question. How do you find your time both as women, leaders, mothers, partners? And how can we also create more specifically as social entrepreneurs, Pam and Somya and Carrie, within our own companies, spaces where this doesn't happen to other women, where we can make those choices. So I'd love to hear from Carrie. If you want to go ahead and just answer, that'd be great.
So it has been a journey for me to ask for help and receive help when it's offered. And I really appreciate the question. I think one of the challenges women face is that not all help is valuable. Not all help offered is valuable. And so for me, it's been really useful to get clear on what is actually helpful to my life. And that changes depending on what phase of life one is going through. It was actually the board of the Global Good Fund, which is a combination of all different kinds of people. But it was the men who actually pulled me aside and said, when we were the CEO of our companies, we had a lot of support on the home front, and you are doing it all or trying to. How would it be if we could try to support you? Because if you are supported, you will be more professionally effective at the Global Good Fund. And the thought had honestly never crossed my mind. And then when they mentioned this, I thought we were having a work meeting and it was like an intervention, but it was really well received. And it turned into a conversation of where could I use the most help? And I honestly wasn't sure at that moment. And so I asked for some time to reflect and wrote down the parts of my life where I thought personally and professionally, I could receive help and have it be the most effective to be the best version of myself in every way. And then, as Kim said, brought that back to the board. And then I also started comparing what is offered to CEOs elsewhere. And that was quite eye-opening. I think one of the biggest challenges is when you're a social entrepreneur and you're starting out and you're building, it's not like there's a ton of extra resources. Even 12 years into this journey, there's still not. But knowing what is out there, knowing what a comparison looks like, being open to saying what we need, identifying who I would like to receive help from, and then asking for help, accessing that help has been transformative for me personally. And I really, again, I think mostly it was men who asked me the question of how could I receive help? What help would I want? I will also just answer the question to say, one of the ways that I have a young family, 3 little kids, and I make choices for how to allocate time and resources. And so for me, I really work on what I put into my body being super healthy. That has been a gift to myself. Taking time for myself as a filling up my cup. It is absolutely necessary. I do not feel remotely guilty about it. I think it is the best thing I could do for myself and the Global Good Fund to have behaving with a full cup, to have time for myself. And that might look like walks out in nature, and it might look like time away. And either way, it makes me as effective a professional and person as I can possibly be.
Love it, love it. You said so many gems, I think, all together. And before I get really excited and caveat on the gems, I'd love to hear from you, Soumya. Like, your industry, obviously, a lot of people under the false impression of social entrepreneurship believe that you start a company with like endless resources. And that means you get to make you get to fashion it how you want to fashion it, right? But I think there's a few choices that we get to make, both as leaders and as a woman and someone who has a team behind her. So I'd love to hear from you as well. Like, how do you, one, take care of yourself in covering many hats? And then two, ensure that like situations that obviously are amazing, such as, being mothers or being given the opportunity to be mothers, are not detrimental to our advancement work-wise as women altogether within your company.
Yes, I think I'm a new wife, so it's been an interesting 2 years of, trying to live and be in a marriage. And what I decided was I'm going to stop feeling guilty, about traveling for my work. I'm going to stop feeling guilty that I need to sit and do a call at 9:30 at night while my husband's doing things that need to be done for home. I mean, you need to first own the fact that what you're doing is equally, if not more important than people around you. And that means your husband, your family, everyone, and stop feeling guilty. You can't feel guilty for what you're doing because you're an entrepreneur, you're figuring it out, you're strapped for resources, you need to step up a lot more than anyone else when you're starting out, especially, right? So that was my first and foremost rule. I'm going to stop feeling guilty about all the work that I'm doing. It's important to me, it's important for the work, the community I'm building. The second thing is routine. So I love running, I love boxing, any form of physical activity that helps me, keep calm, helps me have my center, and that's a non-negotiable. So if I need to cut down on an hour of sleep or cut down on an hour of meeting somebody, I'll make sure that my workout or my runs are part of my week, a part of my schedule, just so that I can be centered for the rest of the day, for the rest of the week. I don't burn out. I have that time, and that gives me strength. I feel badass when I'm boxing. I feel so good when I've completed my 10K, and that gives me strength to do better. So I've identified that about myself. And the third thing is just my partner, my husband's incredible. My family's been amazing. And you need to build that. It doesn't come to them naturally as well. You need to be very empathetic with the people around you and also make them understand why this is important and to offer support and for you to fill in whenever they need you and for them to fill in whenever you may need them. So I think just being not rebellious, but like very, very upfront about what your needs are and expecting the same from the other person and the other people, not just the person, the other people around you. And being 100, I mean, we have this rule in the family that together we'll be 100. So some days if I'm a 20, you be an 80. If some days I'm a 60, then I'll let you be a 40. But together, let's be 100 together. So I think that really helps.
I love it. I'm going to steal that rule. That's a good rule. I'm part of your family now, so I'm just adopting that rule automatically. No, that's beautiful. Pam, I think, obviously you've spoken a bit about this and in general, like you were just telling us earlier, if you mind me sharing, that you came back from an amazing tour with your husband in Colombia for his career in music. So obviously, hopefully you've got a good balance of both, but I'd love to hear from, your perspective as well, like how you're able to balance both, mother, wife,
Yeah.
leader, et cetera, et cetera. Love to hear.
Oh my gosh. It depends on the day, y'all. It depends on the day. This has been a journey that I feel like I've been on for the last several years. I think it's really since becoming a mother, in particular. And I'm just like furiously taking notes of everything y'all are saying. The guilt, the shame, the selfishness, like You know, learning to ask for help is like a huge learning curve for me because I am usually the one helping people, right? I put myself in that position to be a helper, and helping feels good, and helping gives me something, right? And so how do you instead receive help and also remind yourself that if helping feels good to you, then that means it feels good to the other person giving it to you, you know? And there are so many things that I have to stop and remind myself of when I get into these spirals of, I have to do it all myself. You know, I feel the burnout. I feel that I'm on the precipice and on the edge of losing my center and losing my peace. And how do I come back from that? And a huge part of it is that, Soumya, you mentioned it, my husband and I do share the load. And it is the kind of thing where, you know, we work together too. I took his, he's a rapper and a hip hop educator, and he did a tour in Colombia. And I was like, I'm coming with you, and we are leaving our kid with grandma. And just saying like, okay, that's what it is. And I think another thing that I think about too is that I need to treat myself like how I want to treat my employees. Like, for instance, we have a 4-day work week. I better not be working on Friday either, you know? I better be doing something nourishing to replenish myself, because I didn't just give that to my employees, I gave that to myself too. And so I think that part of it is treating myself that way also shows my employees like, yes, you are also actually allowed to not work on Friday. You are also actually allowed to like delete your email app from your phone when you're on vacation and turn off your notifications and all of those things. Because I'm doing that too. Like, I totally turned off my notifications in Colombia. And when I go on vacation and when we take 3 weeks off for like the holidays, like everything is off as much as possible. Sometimes I do sneak in an email check here and there just because I'm anxious. I'm going to admit it now, but I don't respond to them. But I think just like knowing that it is this evolving practice and there's ebbs and flows, um, I think that finding your center and peace also means going with the flow on things that are unexpected, and being okay with like, because I'm a planner. I'm like, this is literally my job is to plan, and to be okay with saying, okay, I couldn't have even possibly planned for that. So we're just gonna see what happens now. That's a huge part of it too, is being the center so that like everything around you, even if it feels like chaos, is manageable.
Love that. I love how you said, you know, and I think I've learned in my experience that everyone balances things differently. And everyone needs different managing points for them to kind of move forward. I want to now, and I'm gonna have to ask Kim to kind of answer this question, because Kim, you've been lucky enough to be both, you know, part of a fellowship, now a board member and a mentor. You know, you've played a lot of roles for the Global Good Fund. So, you know, I want to ask you, you know, when you the fellowship that we provide, the Global Good Fund Fellowship, gives a personalized approach, you know, to leadership development. And it's very intentionally built that way, right? Because I think leadership, while it is a lot of our hard skills, public speaking, etc., business, financial acumen, there's also a lot of the soft skills, which is like, you know, how you lead your team by providing, you know, 4-day work weeks and making sure they know, hey, life is also important. Those are also part of like management, right? So Kim, I'd love to hear from you, like when you are in the fellowship, how did like this tailored experience, which I know was not very recent, but hopefully you can still remember some amazing lessons, how this tailored experience kind of gave shape to like your leadership as a woman and within space. I'd love to hear.
Let me tell you, my experience as a fellow changed my life. It really did. Because all of the things that you all described that you were struggling with, I was struggling with too. And I always put myself last on the list. I was there for everybody else. You know, for many years, I was a single mom raising 2 girls. And so there were many opportunities that I did not take because of the guilt. It was like, that's going to take me out of town. You know, that's going to take me out of the country. You know, I don't want to be away from my girls. I just came back, you know, and I was doing it by myself. What the fellowship, we have a leadership development plan. And part of that leadership development plan forced me to look at ways that I could enhance myself personally and professionally first. And I was taking on the job of 4 or 5 people. Because again, it was like, well, either we didn't have the staff, or I didn't want to spend the money, or, I felt like, I can do this easier than anybody else, da, 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 and so it forced me to say, oh no, where are some ways, like with Carrie, when the board said, how can we support you? I had to really think about, where do I need the support, professionally and personally, and then develop steps to ask for that support. And that opened up so many doors for me on both ends. I hired, someone to be the grant writer, because I was the grant writer. I hired, someone to do the marketing and social media, and we had a marketing broker. I was doing all of that. I made sure that I had additional help in the home. All of those kinds of things that I had to do to be the best leader, because if I am exhausted, I'm no good to anybody. I'm no good to my family. I'm no good to my employees. I'm just no good to the community at all. So everything that you all are talking about, and I can't say that because I still, Pam, I still check my emails when I'm on vacation. I try not to answer them, but I still check them. I'm working on it. But all of those things, I think, are just so important, and we just have to keep reminding ourselves that we're important.
We are important. I love that. I
We are
love that.
important.
We are very important, and we play such an instrumental piece both to our families, ourselves, our ecosystem as women, and as people all together. I want to ask Soumya and Pam the same question, because you guys did the fellowship, the Global Good Fund Fellowship. How do you feel like it addressed specific needs that you could really focus on as women? And you can both say, I'd love to just hear from both of you, kind of like how that journey was for y'all all together. And we can start with anyone. I'll kick it off to Soumya and then Pam.
Just what Kim and Pam was saying right now, the first time that I realized I can leave my laptop while going on a vacation was during one of my lessons, during one of my chats with my mentors as part of the fellowship. So it never even struck me that I can travel without my laptop. And my mentor made sure that I tell her at the airport and send her a photograph that I have not carried my laptop, because I was leaving on vacation 2 days after. So I think another very important thing that I learned was we'd never zoomed out. I'd learned this phrase, which was, we'd never been on the balcony. We were always on the ground, just doing everything, we were involved in every single thing. And the fellowship was my way to be in the balcony and just reflect on who I was. Who am I as a leader? Why am I doing things the way I'm doing? What does my leadership mean to my team? What does the team mean to me? I mean, I just did a deep dive into, it was almost like leadership therapy for me in a very good way, where I just broke down such interesting aspects of why I address problems the way I do, why I talk to people the way I did. And that is very, very useful, because it helps you anchor your decisions. It helps you anchor your mission in the organization, as well as I think most of us can relate to this. When you're building and you're growing, things are so rapidly changing, right? And you need these anchors to help you decide better, to help you make sure that you're being true to yourself, to what you started with and who you started with, right? So that was incredible from the fellowship. And the last thing, as a woman, my mentor told me that you introduce yourself too fast in larger group meetings, because you're trying not to take space. You try to limit your time in conversations, and you want to open space up for others. And I need you to stop doing that. And I hadn't realized that I would immediately stop talking really fast if there's 10 of us on a call. And I would see the boys saying, howdy, hope you're all doing well. So I'm sitting here and checking in from the office, and I would just go, hi, I'm Soumya, and I run this organization. And that's when I realized, hey, let me notice other women. And that's a trend I noticed across group calls, that women were introducing themselves a lot faster because we're afraid of owning space. And as you can see, I'm not doing that anymore. I've just been going on and on. But yeah, I think the fellowship was incredible in just realizing who you are as leaders.
Wow. So with that gem you just dropped, now I'm thinking about every time I've introduced myself in meetings, and I'm like, Oh, okay. Wow. Lessons being learned here. Pam, I'd love to hear from you. And then I think I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to slowly start to wrap up in a bit. But Pam, please go ahead.
Yeah, totally. Oh my gosh. I wrote down leadership therapy. Um, I totally talked to my therapist after I did that 360 assessment. I was like, oh my God. And then my team said this about me, and they said this about me. And I thought they thought this about me was actually the opposite of what I thought they thought about me. It was like, from the beginning, it was like mind blowing. I had, first of all, never thought to ask my team what they thought about me. And I just remember when it was in the instructions, like who you had to ask. I was like, oh, I can ask my coach. I can ask like a peer. I can ask like my, business partner. And they're like, ask your team. And I was like, okay. And that, like seeing that advice, and it goes back to Kim, what you were talking about thinking that you could take it on yourself. I thought I was good at delegating, and it turns out I was not. And my team straight up pointed that out to me. And one of the things that I learned through this fellowship was that if you do, my biggest fear was that I would look incompetent in front of my team. And they did not think that about me. No way. Nowhere did it say they thought that about me. They thought that I had the vision. They thought that I had, I knew the way forward. What they did say was Pam does too much. That kept coming up and coming up and coming up. Pam does too much. I wish she would like share more of the work with us, things like that. And that was really surprising to me. And I think that we do have a tendency, again, the helper, like this is the position I put myself in, and this is how I saw myself, is I'm the helper. So even when I'm a leader, I should be helping. And like, how do you, and a big thing that I recognized was by me trying to do everything, that meant that I also couldn't support other team members becoming leaders as well. And that's the thing, is if I am a leader, I'm also a mentor, and I'm a mentor to my team first. And having that insight right from the beginning and getting a whole year to explore what that meant. Like I had team members tell me at the end of that year, they're like, I see the work that you've been doing to change as a leader. Like they saw it in the day to day. And that was really powerful to hear back from them. For them to say, like, I see that you're changing and you are working at it, and the team is better for it. Unprompted, to hear that. The other thing that has been amazing about the fellowship is the year that I was in it was a really, really hard year for the business. And I was nervous about even saying that or sharing that with them. And I just have this memory of Carrie, you in particular, like sending me an email and saying, like, we're here for you through the hard times. This is why this fellowship exists. We don't want to just hear about the good stuff. We're here to help. And just having that like email come through, like in the midst of me like crying about how hard the year was. Well, first of all, I cried more. Thanks a lot. But there was just such a sense of like, safety net isn't even the right word. There was this like trust and community that I realized I found here that I hadn't had before. And I'm so grateful for it.
Pam, I remember you sharing, and I want to thank you because you made it okay for everyone, myself included, to acknowledge that life can be really hard. Work can be really hard. Life can be really hard. It's part of being a human being.
Yeah.
And you made it okay for everyone to acknowledge that in our own lives. So thank you for being vulnerable and transparent.
Beautiful. We have one question that someone asked, and I think this is a question that a lot of us have, especially, entering jobs, or even like maybe you've been working for forever and you realize you've never had a mentor, or you don't know what a mentor looks like. So someone asked, how does one find a mentor? Carrie, you for me have been a great example of someone who's had a lot of beautiful and amazing mentors, and taught us within the organization how to access mentors altogether. So I'd love to hear from you how you found your mentor, and kind of like how you went about it.
Thank you, Sandra. So I think I'm one of the most mentored people I know, because I ask. And it comes when I ask, I don't necessarily share what that looks like. I don't say necessarily, will you be my mentor? I ask for the gift of someone's time or perspective. And then I follow up and thank them. And I also share what I learned from that conversation. And then I keep following up so they see how I've been implementing that perspective and that gift of time through the long haul. Often the people I want to mentor me are not local. And I might find people online who I think are really impressive in whatever their respective field is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be relevant to my role professionally, but I want them to mentor me on some part of life or how they approach a topic a certain way. And so I'll ask usually for the gift of a little bit of time. And it's the shorter, the better. And I just ask for 15 minutes and then I keep it to 15 minutes and I say thank you by email and I follow up on what I learned. And then I don't ask again until I have something really reasonable to ask for. But I think the main thing is to ask, and what to ask for matters, that it's not asking necessarily for something so formal as mentoring, but when one asks on repeat for the gift of time or perspective, which truly is a gift, and one does that on repeat and thanks the person with gratitude and shows follow-up, eventually that person by default becomes a mentor, whether it's officially called that or not.
Love it. Everyone here has been given an amazing template. Thank God this is being recorded. This is good information. Kim, I'd love to hear from you as well, like how you've gone about both when finding a mentor and maybe like being someone's mentor as well. I'd love to hear.
You know, I did not learn the gift of what Carrie describes until much later in my career. My first mentor, I've had, you know, people who fed into my life all my life, but my first, what I would consider real mentor, is she saw something in me and mentored me in the businesses. She ran several businesses, and so mentored me in the businesses that she ran, and I learned how to be an entrepreneur. And how to lead in that manner. But I will tell you what I tell my 2 adult daughters is to, you know, go online and, as Carrie said, go to LinkedIn or wherever, you know, look for those individuals who are either where you want to be, or they're doing something that really is significant to you, and go to them with specific questions, you know, and just ask them for a little bit of time. You'd like to interview them, and ask for some specific questions, you know, 10, 15 minutes. And then again, thank them for that. And what has happened is, from high school, my daughters have had people pouring into their lives. And in some cases, I'll make those connections, you know, for them. In other cases, they make those connections for themselves. And one person that I made a connection for said, you know who your mom is, right? I don't know why you're asking me to mentor you. And she was like, yeah, but she's just mom, you know. And, you know, in other words, she's clueless, you know. And so, you know, she mentored her for a while, but very specific and short term. So I think, you know, that's a key. And people just seek me out sometimes through LinkedIn, through local connections or our national office. You know, someone there may point someone in my direction and say, hey, you need to go and talk to Kimberly about this. You know, you're trying to get to the position where she is, or, you know, just ask her if you can pick her brain. And it may be a short term, it may be 1 or 2 meetings, or it could last for a year.
I love it. Asking for help, asking for mentorship, you know, things that we are mentioning that I think you've all reflected are not easy and are sometimes, you know, all about framing and how we go about it. And as we close up, I want to come to a point and a question, which I think, you know, Carrie, you had been beautifully highlighting how men had been allies, you know, and while women here, we all strive to do our best. None of us is perfect. We all have our biases. You know, I might enter a workplace and they might be a woman who I think can assist me, but perhaps she's going through a different journey where she doesn't have capacity, and her experience in the workplace is different from mine. You know, as women collectively, we're not all one person. We all have different experiences. So I'd love to hear, you know, how perhaps you felt both supported by women within your own spaces or women outside of your spaces, and how you as women support other women as well. Knowing that we don't do supporting perfectly, knowing that, you know, these avenues where you might think someone wants to go in that direction, but they're going in this direction. But just like how we as women can support each other continuously, and also be honest and real about where we are at as women and people in our own journeys. I'd love to start with Somia.
So I think The first thing is offering time and, and just letting people, other women, just share how they're feeling, share the challenges that they're facing, hear them just brainstorm, just allowing them that space, a safe space where they can come to you and even share. I mean, I don't think I'm ever in a place to offer perfect support or perfect guidance. I'm on my learning journey right now, and what I have right now is the time that I can offer to people to just have a place of comfort, to have someone they can trust. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just offering myself as an individual. And second, to Carrie's point, I think just opening doors. That is the most valuable thing that you can do for entrepreneurs or for any individual who's trying to, you know, who are on the learning journey, are trying to build their careers, are trying to build themselves, just enabling them to meet more people, enabling them to be a part of more experiences, enabling them to access more resources and funds. That's the most valuable support you can offer. And these are the two things that I'm actively trying to do right now.
Beautiful. Carrie, I'd like to go with you, and then I'd like to kind of give us a closing. So Carrie, I'd love to hear your answer. And just for everyone to know, this is recorded and we will be sharing it so everyone can have access to this amazing, invaluable, insightful conversation we've had so far. Carrie.
So I know we're almost at time here. Pam, I would love to hear what your thought would be about this, and then I can add in.
Love it.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that like came up when Somia was talking was just like, I have a lot of like really amazing like female friends, and like being that comfort for each other, whether it's in like a formal mentorship role or just like needing to vent or needing to text or needing to send like a stupid meme at like midnight because you're still up. I think that women already were so good at doing that for each other. And I think that along with opening doors and along with the mentorship and all of those kinds of things, like we can be each other's safe spaces. And it's great that we do that for each other.
Very neat, Pam. I find that some of the busiest women are the best at getting things done. So I just say ask. What is the worst thing that can happen is they say, not right now. No, not right now, because I'm overcommitted or I'm at capacity. And the best thing that can happen is way worth the risk of no. So just ask.
Love it. Love it. Oh, that was an interesting question. Someone asked about speaking perfect English with an African accent. I'm actually Kenyan. I'm happy to give you any extra insightful notes on how to, perfect, but there's no such thing as perfect English. We're in a multilingual, multicultural society, and we're all doing our best. So perhaps asking people to, maybe slowing down when people can hear you and repeating yourself is one option. But first of all, thank you so much, panelists. You guys, this is a great conversation. This was so good. I like wanted to follow the questions, but by the time I was like, nah, it's okay. We can just talk. So thank you to everyone who attended the panel discussion. We really appreciate you giving us our time. Thank you to our panelists for an enriching conversation and just for creating a space where we can both celebrate women and keep the needle moving forward and have these conversations. I heard a lot about self-care. I heard a lot about asking. I heard a lot about mentorship. I heard a lot about, just creating spaces where women can come together and be a safe space for each other. And that way, moving together and moving forward, women who come after us, before us, and also about our men and men in general, being allies, being supporters, being partners. So this was a great conversation. Thank you all so much. And yeah, any final notes before I close us off?
Sandra, thank you for creating a beautiful space for us all to share.
Love it. Thank you so much. And for anyone who has any questions on the panelists, there's a follow-up email, and I'll be happy to share LinkedIn pages and any information. And you guys are amazing. Have a great rest of your evenings, mornings, afternoons, etc., etc. All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.